therapist perception.
Bachelorette.
Hello and welcome back to Reactivity TV. I'm Amy Albero and I'm a licensed therapist.
I am Chris. I'm not a licensed therapist, and I'm still here to talk about more Bachelor in Paradise breakups.
Yes. If this is the first episode of our mini series that you're watching, Chris and I are going to be talking about the aftermath of Bachelor in Paradise because all three couples that left together have all broken up.
Yep. And it's important to know that we are not a news station for Bachelor Nation. We are simply picking pieces of information and pieces of news that we think are interesting to talk about within the context of relationships or overall wellness, and discussing those. There are plenty of other great podcasts and great YouTube channels that are doing news. So don't expect us to be, combing through everyone's, TikTok feeds all day long, trying to
Piece it all
together for you.
Yeah, right. And the same disclaimer goes for this as it does for all of our other Reactivity TV podcasts, in that we're really only commenting on and reacting to what we see on TV, which is a highly edited and produced TV show. We don't have enough information to comment on, speculate about, assess the actual people that are involved in these relationships. And I don't want to. That feels icky for me to try to speculate about, other people's relationships, especially when we don't have enough information. And to restate what Chris said, we're really using the information that we have by the Bachelor franchise to help us engage in a discussion and learn a little bit more about relationships, dating, and well-being overall.
Yep.
So we are here today to talk about Kat and John Henry's relationship and its breakup. So we're going to get into all of that. But before we do, please be sure to hit that like button at the bottom of this video. And don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel. These two things are small, but they go a very, very long way. And we really appreciate when you do.
Yeah. And please also hit that bell icon so that you're alerted anytime we post new content to the channel.
All right. So
John Henry and Kat, the most predictable of the three.
Yeah.
I mean, we're going to
want to make you a little happy.
Schadenfreude, I believe, is the word that you...
My favorite word.
Favorite word. So we are going to ask the same three questions of each of the couples, and that's going to be, was the breakup inevitable? Was the breakup predictable? And what were the red flags, or, were there any signs or indicators that a breakup was going to most likely be coming? And so let's just, get right into it with the easy one. Was this predictable? The most predictable breakup of all time? Yes, no?
Yes.
And go and start us off. Why do you think so?
Why was it predictable? Let me count the ways. I mean, they just seemed like they were from two very different worlds. It seemed like they lived two very different lifestyles. It seemed like they had very different sets of goals. They just didn't seem compatible at all. They had a lot of chemistry, but lacked a lot of compatibility.
Yeah, I mean, other than being two hot people that both applied to be in the Bachelor Nation, was there anything else that they actually had in common? Like, not really, right? And I actually loved how they ended, because it felt like production was actually doing a wink and a nod to this in the last cold close, where it was Kat and John Henry sitting on the beach, and they're talking about, like, hey, do you know what this random drug is? He's like, I don't have no idea what you're talking about. Or what is this other thing? And neither one of them can speak the other one's language at all. All they can do is make out with one another. And once they stop kissing, like, they don't have any means by which to communicate, and no real common ground or common foundation.
Yes. Yeah. Very little common ground. You use that word foundation. We reference foundation a lot when we talked about Kylie and Avon. And here we are again, very little foundation here, and it built on no common ground, or rather a foundation couldn't be built because there was no common ground here.
Yeah. So let's say, was it inevitable? It was predictable. Did it reach the point of being inevitable?
Also, yes.
Interesting. Okay.
Do you don't think so?
No, I think I think that inevitable is an extremely, extremely high bar, and indicates, a lot of the inevitability is whether or not somebody's choices could have changed the trajectory, right? Avon and Kylie are a perfect example where their individual choices and their individual growth could have changed the trajectory of that, which is why we disagree, spoiler, that you think that their breakup was inevitable. I do not. However, in this case, I don't think either one of their actions could have actually changed the trajectory of the relationship.
They'd have to become two different human beings.
They would literally have to literally change who they are fundamentally as human beings, and that was not going to work. So the only way they end up in a relationship is an extraordinarily unhappy, unsatisfying, unfulfilled one.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why I think it was inevitable. But what do you think?
I mean, you nailed it. I mean, you said it so perfectly. I truly don't think that I have anything to add.
All right. Well, the reason that they give is career goals misalignment.
Also, duh. Like,
and he works in the water. You don't like the water.
Well, listen.
He pees himself.
Okay. This is also something that I have a lot of frustration about in terms of that being the answer that is given. And the reason that I say that is that's not that it's not a legitimate reason. It's more that what were you doing on the beach then if you were not having a conversation about your career and your goals and your future? That's hopefully what you are doing in the fantasy suites. That's like arguably what it's really for, is so that you can have conversations off camera, off mic, about things like finances, etc., like more of the things that you don't actually want to let like us in on. And so it's frustrating and disappointing to hear that it sounds like that they didn't actually do that and then decided to yet still take this step toward engagement. It tells me so much about their lack of readiness. And so while I think it was inevitable that they broke up, what hindsight is telling me in terms of the reason stated for their breakup is just even more how inevitable it was, because they clearly were not having the conversations they needed to be having in order to determine if they had enough there, had enough of a foundation there to build on to move forward.
Yeah, I mean, look at family, religion, finances / career. Those are the three things you need to be in alignment on in order to have or have accepted a viable long-term compromise on in order to have a stable relationship and a healthy relationship. Like you missed on one of those pretty big, you know. So yeah, it was clearly inevitable.
And I think the thing that, you know, it's not even necessarily a criticism of this show. It's a criticism of specifically the two couples that got engaged on this season and the ones who got engaged last season, I guess, too, because they also broke up. We've seen many couples come out of Bachelor in Paradise who have go on to have long-term relationships, continue their engagement, get married, build their family. So like, it's not that this can't happen within a short amount of time, but it does speak to the you don't have a large quantity of time, so you need to fill it with quality in terms of what you are doing with your time. And the fact that, again, Kat and John Henry just could not conceive of how to use their time wisely indicates to me their lack of readiness independently to be engaged.
Yeah. All right. So what were the big red flags for you?
Why don't you start this one off?
All right. I mean, look, I think the first and biggest red flag is when John Henry is standing, he's doing his whole like monologue prior to the thing. And he says, my heart says one thing and my head says another.
Oh, my gut.
I'm sorry, my gut. Yeah. What did I say? Heart and head. Yeah. Sorry. My heart says one thing. My gut says another. I mean, if those are not in alignment, what are you doing? Like, you're making the biggest, most important decision of your life.
Right.
And if you are in inner conflict over that decision, then you need to step back and talk about and decide why that is. And, you know, one of the big things about this show is, as we keep talking about, the accelerated timeline. You don't have the time to really process that. So while the majority of the reason why these relationships are not going to work is because those natural conflicts, like, they're natural, they're good. You're supposed to have them. You're supposed to work through them. I think one of the really bizarre things, and you see this typically female to male kind of complaint, is I'm ready. You see how with Kylie is a perfect example. I'm ready. I don't know why you aren't ready. It's like, whoa. Even perfectly acceptable, natural concerns that he is working through and processing. And John Henry is doing the same thing. He's having them, but he's not working through them. He's having them, acknowledging them, and saying,
Mm-hmm.
engagement, here we go.
Right.
And that was a big red flag for me. It's like, hey, like you need to think about this. I think, and I wasn't super complimentary to Aben throughout the season, but that was the big compliment I gave him at the end. Was he held his ground and said, no, this is a big deal. I need to work through this.
Mm-hmm.
And I would have liked to have seen John Henry, and the fact that he didn't do that, it tells me that he almost certainly was making the wrong decision.
Mm-hmm.
I just want to take a quick pause to tell you that Revive is hiring. In our Miami and Pittsburgh offices, we have full and part-time W-2 and 1099 clinician positions available, and this includes both postgraduate and associate level licenses, in addition to fully licensed clinicians. In our Connecticut offices, we have full-time, fully licensed W-2 clinician positions available, including clinical supervisor opportunities. If you are interested in working for a company that values community, work-life balance, and your personal and professional growth, then we want to meet you. Find a link to our website in our bio.
I'm so glad that you brought up John Henry's disconnect or dissonance between his heart and his gut, that his gut was the thing that told him no. Did you know that we actually have a second brain? We have a second nervous system.
I do know this because you did a thing with Elizabeth DiDonato, Revive's nutritionist, on this. And that was actually a really, really interesting. It was actually one of my favorite of all of the Wishing You Well podcasts. That was one of my favorite ones.
Yeah, it's really good.
And apparently she was making the claim that your gut brain is actually more in tune to certain things than your head brain.
Yes.
Because your head brain's dealing with all the other stuff in the body, and it sometimes gets distracted.
Exactly. Yes. So we have a second nervous system in our gut. It's called the enteric nervous system. And you're right. It is way more knowledgeable in a lot of sense than our central nervous system that exists in our actual brain, in our head. And so that John Henry was having this knowledge in his gut says a lot. That the most knowing that he could possibly be was telling him, this is not right, or this does not feel right. We need to begin to listen to our gut. It is so wise, and John Henry just disregarded it.
And that's where the whole listen to your gut comes from.
Mm-hmm.
Because even back in ancient times, they realized that your stomach is smarter than your brain.
Our gut, not necessarily our stomach, but our gut.
Well, I don't know about you, but my gut and my stomach are pretty much, they're all just one big area right now.
Well, I will.
Indistinguishable from one another right now.
It's the holidays.
It's the holidays.
I will actually link that podcast in our show notes too. It's all about listening to your gut, understanding your gut and how to listen to it and to understand what it's trying to tell you. So it's a really good episode, by the way. So I'll just drop it below. So that, yes, I agree with you. That was such a big red flag. The other red flag was, I think, what contributed to John Henry's gut feeling was that they hadn't actually had conflict. And that was the thing that he said, it's kind of weird. We haven't gotten into a fight. And so I don't know what that's going to be like.
Especially since she had fought with everybody else on the beach at least twice.
Right. Yes.
Yeah.
So that is also a red flag. And that's one of those misconceptions that I think people have about relationships, is that couples don't fight, and it's good to not have conflict. It's good to not fight, that it's a good sign. And actually, it's really not. It's actually, as a therapist, I get quite concerned when I hear everything's perfect and we never fight. That means that one of you isn't being honest.
Mm-hmm.
At least one of you is not being honest.
You know, my grandparents basically never, ever, ever fought ever. And then later on in life, we just realized that one or the other of them was just basically just taking it in every situation. And it was just so unhealthy. And they finally started to communicate shortly before my grandfather passed, several years ago now. But, and that was one of the healthiest things, was that they were deep into their 60s by this point, when they finally started to have conversations about how just they'd been married 50 years and just one of them was just eating it all the time. And the resentment that had built up, even though they loved each other and the wonderful marriage and stuff like that. So yeah, even healthy marriages that are successful and with loving people still could benefit from a scraping the yard every once in a while.
Of course. So that was one red flag. Another red flag for me was just Kat's maturity level.
Yeah.
And her inability to navigate through conflict in other relationships. She struggled a lot, at least on what we saw, struggled a lot interpersonally. And so that would be a red flag for me around her ability to, in a relationship, be able to navigate through said conflict, is because we haven't seen her successfully do that any other time on the show.
Mm-hmm. So now again, I'm going to say this with all love and respect, because we all know that I'm a big fan of John Henry. I enjoy him on the show, but how do you think him being a bit of a dum-dum ranks up for Kat? Is that,
we don't actually know that he lacks intelligence, so I just want to say that. But I think that his demeanor, his laid backness, if he maybe wasn't as intelligent as Kat, I think that actually works quite well. I think Kat is the type of person that she's the star and he's the supporting character.
Yeah.
I think that it probably works really well.
Just like in our relationship.
Which one are you?
You're the star, I'm the supporting cast.
Oh, I feel that the same way about you.
Oh, so you think I'm the star and you're the supporting cast?
Mm-hmm.
I think that's true.
So I think that dynamic actually kind of works for them. I don't think that Kat would be well suited to have this is going to sound bad, but kind of an equal.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Because I think she's more of an alpha, and I think she probably needs someone that's a little bit more of a beta.
Yeah. All right. So what else do you want to talk about with them? Anything?
No, what else is there to say?
Oh, you know what? So a little off topic, but I think I with Kylie and Aven breaking up, I am sad that they broke up, because it means there's a potential that they both will reappear on the beach in some future episode. With John Henry and Kat, I
was just thinking that was your highlight from
that was my rose, was that we never have to see him again, and here we are. With Kat and John Henry, I'm actually I kind of feel the opposite. As much as I dislike Kat, she is good entertainment. Mm-hmm. And John Henry, he's just so chill and a little bit sort of unaware, but he's so desired by the women that I actually do think that he's additive to a show like Paradise. So I guess them breaking up means we might get more of them. And as much as I don't necessarily want to get more of Kat, she does bring some entertainment to the show.
Kat cannot come back unless she is trying for a redemption arc. She cannot. She was a villain on Zach's season. She was a villain on this season. She needs to come back humble.
What would a redemption arc even look like for Kat? So I think that's what they tried to give her with the John Henry thing.
Doesn't yell and scream at everybody.
Mm.
That'd be a start.
I feel like you're telling me I need a redemption arc.
I guess we'll see.
All right.
I wouldn't hate seeing either of them again, as much as she was really hard to stomach.
But that's sort of like rubbernecking.
Yeah.
The car on the side of the road is on fire, and you can't. You feel really bad for whoever's in there.
Right. The reason we watch reality TV.
Yeah.
It's a train wreck. Yeah.
Exactly.
So, I mean, again, listen, as much as there is a little bit of, as I said at the top, satisfaction in the fact that this couple is not together, I do wish them well. I really think that they both have some work to do independently. And so I wish them luck in their healing and in their journeys.
Well said. So why don't we get out of here?
Yep. All right. Okay. Well, we are going to be back with other episodes regarding the other two breakups that happened on the beach, or rather off the beach. So make sure to check those out. I will also drop in our show notes the Wishing You Well podcast episode about listening to your gut. It's a great one. Definitely check that out. You can also follow along with us at Revive CFW on Instagram. You can follow me at Amy Albero LCSW, and we will be back soon. Bye.
See ya.